and a short could resume as early as this weekend. It comes as a 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon has taken effect, but already Israel has been accused of violations. Joining me now is the UK ambassador to Iran and council member of Chatham House, Rob McCare. Rob, good to see you on Sky this morning. We know that considerable efforts have gone in from the US and Iran to result in this, albeit fragile but existing, between Israel and Lebanon. What does that say to you about where the negotiations between the US and Iran may be at the moment and where they're going?
Thank you. Well, it was clearly necessary for this ceasefire in Lebanon to happen in order for the Iran-US talks to have their second round. The Pakistanis have been playing a very constructive role in getting the two sides into a position where they can sit down again. And the obstacle to that, one of the obstacles to that was the continuing fighting in Lebanon. So obviously, the Israeli government has been put under pressure by the US to bring this to a halt. But as your report says, it's very fragile. And Israel has been taking the opportunity of the war in Iran to carry out an extremely destructive campaign in Lebanon. And it really is, I think, reluctant to put a pause on that.
To the extent that Hezbollah has been weakened, and there are different views on that, but to the extent that it's what you understand that to be, how does that change Iran's hand in these negotiations?
Hezbollah was already very weakened by the last couple of years. The question in Lebanon is whether the government can take on Hezbollah and disarm it completely, which is what the US and Israel is demanding. Lebanese would like to see that happen. Hezbollah has been a very corrosive force in Lebanese politics. But they're also aware that the memories of the civil war in Lebanon are still very live, and there are risks of the country splitting if the government doesn't take a very careful course. So it's difficult, very difficult for Lebanon. They're really squeezed by this. But I think the talks between the US and Iran that are coming up, although there has been talk, I think Daily Vance was talking about the potential for a grand bargain between the two countries. That does seem very far-fetched at the moment. I would imagine that what the negotiators are looking at now, and this has really come out from the Iranian side in terms of what they've been saying, is a deal that continues the ceasefire and prevents them going back into kinetic warfare. And that essentially would have to be about the Strait of Hormuz, and I would imagine it's also going to be about some sort of economic relief for Iran and some sort of guarantee that they're not going to be subject to indiscriminate attack in the future.
So you will know, having dealt with Iranian leaders over the years, the way, obviously they're not homogenous group, but the way they operate. When you get keep saying things like, the US is locked and loaded, how is that? What's the read across from that into the way Iran is going to view these negotiations?
Well, the bedrock of the Iranian regime's sort of view of itself is the concept of resistance, and I think they would say they've heard it all before from the US, and they've shown in this recent conflict that they can survive. And survival, being able to maintain control and continue to show they can fight back is a form of victory in their eyes. So I think the people on the Iranian side doing these negotiations, they are very experienced. They know all of the issues, the sanctions, construction, the nuclear details intimately. They are very hard negotiators, and they will be very sophisticated. And I don't think they'll let themselves be browbeaten by comments like the ones you just mentioned from the US Secretary of Defense.
Is it clear to you, I mean, you're talking about the negotiators, they're essentially their interlocutors, but who is really instructing them? I mean, it's not abundantly clear, is it?
No, I think Iran has prepared for this conflict, which they saw coming by putting in place succession plans. They knew that there would be decapitation attacks, which there have been on their senior leaders. I don't think any of us know from the outside how much of a role the new supreme leader, Moscow Khamenei, is playing. But the is the inside core of the regime is quite a tight-knit group with a very clear set of ideological and political views. And so people who are representing them at talks, Foreign Minister Arakchi and Speaker of Parliament Alaba, they will feel empowered to represent the country, but it will be in a very narrow band of quite hardline continuity politics. There's no one really in Iran who can take a bold step, say we're going to do something radical and change our position, have involved in all the West now. Not for the moment.
While we've got you, as somebody who has been an ambassador, I'm just wondering whether you have a view on, is it surprising that somebody can fail security vetting and still be appointed to a role like that?
I don't have any knowledge of what went on in the situation with the UK ambassador to Washington appointment. But clearly, Peter Mandelson was appointed as a political figure, appointed by the government as someone who they trusted to go and do the business in Washington. And so I'd imagine that people look at that in a particular way, and maybe out of the ordinary. But security vetting is very important, and it is a very, very thorough process. They've been through it. It's something that takes a long time, and even when it's being fast-tracked, is quite rigorous.
And can I just ask one very quick follow-up to that? Are you told the outcome of that, or is it just implicitly assumed that you can't because you're appointed? Because it's being reported that Peter Mandelson said that he hadn't been told himself that he didn't pass.
I'm not familiar with any cases of people who've been failed vetting and been told that. I'm sure it's happened in the past. I haven't come across that. I don't know if you'd be told really quickly.
All right. Thanks for giving us some answers to that, and apologies for springing it on you. Great question, wasn't it? Well, going back to the ceasefire and the situation in Lebanon, we cannot bring in our security in the background. Professor Michael Clark. Good morning to you, Michael. What is your analysis about how precarious this ceasefire is, and indeed what I was discussing with Rob McClare there, what the potential lead across is from a ceasefire being in place, which has been really assisted by US and Iran to get to that position, what that says about US-Iranian negotiations.
No, you're absolutely right, Sam. We're all working hard, we're moving hard in a sort of complex geometry, because the main event is to try to get a deal between the United States and Iran early next week, or early this weekend, or early next week. We've got a process ongoing which looks a bit like then that's more likely to create a situation which we can move forward more peacefully. But for that to happen, something has to be held in abeyance in Lebanon, because the lack of a ceasefire in Lebanon was undermining the main event, which is the Iranian thing. So the Lebanon ceasefire is extremely unstable. Yeah. Because Hezbollah have said they will observe it. What that means, we don't know. And interestingly, actually, thank goodness, this one's been written down. I mean, most of these American ceasefires are written down, why nobody knows what they're supposed to cover or when they're supposed to start. This one was written down. But if you look at the wording in it, it allows Israel to break it more or less. Because it says nothing in this agreement will prejudice Israel's ability to either strike back or to strike if it is in imminent danger. So if the Israelis think they're going to be struck, they can get back. And it's being reported that they're already. I know they've done it. Yeah. And I think they're still fighting with Beit Nun, which is a stronghold of Hezbollah. A very conditional ceasefire. The idea is that there has to be some sort of process in Lebanon which lasts long enough into next week to act as a sort of a cover for the main event, which is an American-Iranian discussion. I think that's what it's all about. I'm very, very skeptical that this Lebanese ceasefire would come to anything, but in theory, President Prime Minister of Israel, will meet apparently in the White House next week. That's never happened before. They've never had diplomatic relations, which is astonishing. They've never discussed in 30 odd years the possibility of cooperating against Hezbollah. And they were supposed to discuss it actively in the ceasefire deal of last autumn, when the Americans were going to facilitate this process, which is now ongoing, but it's just been forgotten about. It was written down and then everybody walked away from it and pretended it didn't really exist. So something unique is about to happen, at least at the political level, between Netanyahu and President Owen. I don't think it will come to very much. Oh yeah, there you go. There they are. I don't think it will come to anything, but actually the fact that they're meeting might hold things off enough to get some sort of mega deal between President Trump and the Iranian leadership.
Meanwhile, though, the situation for civilians in Lebanon is horrific.
Yeah, I mean, literally the south of Lebanon, south of the Litani River, has more or less now been cleared. Everybody's moved north. And the Israelis have said they will have that area, which is about 20 miles deep kilometer area up to the Litani. They'll have that as their security zone. Now, it doesn't mean to say they'll put troops there, but they'll have a belt of troops about 6 miles into the Lebanese border, and then the other 10 or 14 miles, they'll keep it clear of any Lebanese villagers or anybody else. And Hezbollah, they've tried this before, it never worked, but they're going to try it again. It's the third time since 1982. They're trying this again to create this security zone to protect their population in northern Israel from Hezbollah rocket attacks. And again, you've got to give some credence to that. Hezbollah have always been targeting northern Israel, and 60,000 Israelis after 2023 had to move out of northern Israel because it wasn't safe. And now the Israelis have moved them back. They're saying, look, we're not going to do this again. We're not going to move our population out a second time. So if somebody has to move, the Lebanese can move north, and we'll have an empty security zone which will protect our population in northern Israel from rocket attacks coming over the border. And then the other issue that goes with all of this is, can the Lebanese army somehow tame Hezbollah? Because that's what the Israelis demand. And the answer is no. The Lebanese army is about 80,000 strong. Hezbollah in 2021, Nasrallah claimed that the Hezbollah was about 100,000 strong. Now, I think both those figures might be unrealistically high, but if the effective numbers of fighters is only half that, the fact is the Lebanese army is always smaller than Hezbollah and is far less well motivated and trained. In order to suppress Hezbollah, the Lebanese army would have to be 2 or 3 times bigger and well equipped, and they're not.
All right, Michael, thank you very much. You're watching Sky News Today. Coming up, Harry and Meghan meet survivors of the Bondi Beach shooting. We'll bring you all the latest from down there.
Good morning, gentlemen. Your life is pretty simple. Work hard, you do what I tell you, you'll reduce your sentence, you go home to your friends and your family. What are you even doing here? I can succeed, but I can't do it here. Your wife's out. This is all tough. Let's go.
I left for a reason.
We stand together, whether we're fighting fire. No! Or we get thrown into one.
Fire Country, Tuesdays at 9 on Sky Mix. On Whitey Frost, but worried you'll damage your enamel. Now whiter can be stronger. Reset your smile with Oral B Clinical Intensive Whitening. Unlike other toothpaste, Oral B remineralizes through enamel, while gently dissolving stains without scrubbing. Oral B. Whiter, faster, stronger. Get whiter teeth in one day. 1 in 3 people born today will develop dementia. That's the parents.
Dealing with my lot means making smart choices. And with our family going, I want to protect the life we built. That's why I'm calling it smart insurance.
Hi, I'd like a quick quote, please.
Okay, you can choose a benefit amount up to £750,000 depending on your age.
Brilliant.
If you're a resident aged 18 to 64, you can apply with just a few health and lifestyle questions, all done over the phone for instant peace of mind and protection for your family. And we know family life doesn't wait. So as part of our Smart Family Guarantee, your loved ones are protected from day one.
Sounds great. I could help my husband pay off the mortgage. I'll go ahead.
And for even more family protection, you can add cover for your children or critical illness. Plus, you'll also get your choice of £125 gift card.
Looks like my lot will learn to plan ahead too.
Protect the life you've built the smart way. To get a free life insurance quote today, call our specialist UK team on 0800 977 5753 or visit smartinsurance.co.uk.
Introducing new Dove Whole Body Deo. Smells beautiful everywhere. From here to there and even there. New Dove Whole Body Deo. Dermatologically tested.
Someone's happy. Get that lucky cow feeling with luckycowbingo.com/bingo. The site that's bursting with beautiful bingo games. 75 ball bingo. Even 90 ball bingo. Build your bingo boots today. Get that lucky cow feeling at luckycowbingo.com/bingo or download the Lucky Cow Android app from the Play Store.
Now that retirement's here, it's time for me to focus on the things that really matter in life, like making sure my family can manage funeral costs when I'm no longer around. Which reminds me, welcome to British Senior, the UK's #1 rated provider of over 50s life insurance.
Hi, I'd like a quick quote, please.
No problem.
I mean, let's just go back a second, okay? So this is problematic for the Prime Minister for a number of reasons. Firstly, he appointed Peter Mandelson to the role of US ambassador, knowing that this man had a link with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. But what he has always maintained is that firstly, he did true. Following reporting in The Guardian last night, Downing Street has confirmed it, saying the Prime Minister only found out that Peter Mandelson failed the security vetting on Tuesday this week, saying that ever since Tuesday, the Prime Minister has been establishing an investigation to find out the facts, so that on Monday, after this weekend, he can update the House of Commons. Now, what number 10 is doing is taking this one path, sticking to it, that the Prime Minister was never made aware. Therefore, the question, I suppose, is did he knowingly mislead Parliament? And that's where it comes down with MPs. A number of people have now lost their job over this Mandelson scandal. First, we saw Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff, now the most senior civil servant in the Foreign Office. I mean, to put it simply, I suppose being thrown under the bus by the government, they chose to withhold this information. The Prime Minister never knew about it. There are so many questions here that need answering, not least because the system has already been questioned. We had Mandelson files released earlier this year in March. They showed criticism there around the vetting process. Prime Minister's National Security Advisor saying that it was rushed and unusual. Also, there's knowledge that the Prime Minister was warned of a possible reputational risk of appointing this man in the first place. What it comes down to now is whether the Prime Minister can convince his MPs of this argument. You heard it there in that clip. He is very clearly sticking to, at the moment, picking up from Labour, it was the right thing to do to effectively sack Ollie Robbins, the permanent Undersecretary in the Foreign Office. But as Sam has reflected this morning before that interview with Keir Starmer, questions come back now about the Prime Minister's judgment. Was the man who appointed him in the first place, knowing that link? Obviously, today arguing he didn't have the information, he couldn't make a proper decision. But this is a man going into local elections. Is speaking there from Paris. He is trying to talk about his own diplomatic efforts to try and reopen the Strait of Hormuz, make the UK look like it is standing proudly on the international stage. And all we are doing is questioning again the Prime Minister's judgment.
Well, as you were saying there, Lucy, we are expecting the Prime Minister to be arriving at the Elysee Palace any moment. We can show you the live scene there at the moment. All the pomp and circumstance out ready to greet him. And as you're describing there, Lucy, a domestic, almighty great headache for the Prime Minister. Many people say that he is more comfortable on the world stage with diplomacy efforts geopolitically. A little more analysis from you about what's the best he can achieve, do we think, with this meeting with Macron about getting the Straits of Hormuz open when most of the important conversations about this seem to be happening elsewhere?
Yeah, I've been having conversations over the past couple of weeks about whether or not Keir Starmer can achieve something. As I just said, he is really pushing himself to the front of this diplomatic operation when it comes to trying to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Today, he's meeting with 40 other nations, Emmanuel Macron among one of the representatives. This is one of a number of meetings that have primarily been chaired by the UK. I was speaking to a former Conservative cabinet minister yesterday who was saying he really doesn't see what the Prime Minister can achieve here. We are on the periphery of this conflict, and that is a criticism that has been coming out in recent weeks. In terms of how the Prime Minister is perceived on the world stage when it comes to his MPs back at home, I was speaking to one just yesterday before these latest revelations about Mandelson broke, and he effectively said that the Prime Minister is looking quite good, is doing very well in his managing of this conflict. It looks good to Labour MPs. He looks strong on the world stage. But obviously now we are talking other things. So I think, as you say, there has been criticism over just how much the Prime Minister can achieve. But you can probably say the same about some of the other nations that are there today. And what he is, I suppose, crucially trying to do, we've heard it in the past few weeks from the Prime Minister, is strengthening up of rhetoric against Donald Trump and a need to, I suppose, shift some of our loyalties, our alliances, and being closer to Europe, for example. The Prime Minister was in the Middle East last week meeting with Gulf allies, and part of that was to strengthen our alliances elsewhere, our economic alliances. And we've seen that relationship in part break absolutely everything they can to get the Strait of Hormuz reopened, because crucially it's affecting people at home the longer it goes on.
Lucy, for now, thank you. We're keeping a close eye on the scene there, the live scene in Paris, awaiting the arrival of the Prime Minister. And we'll bring you that as and when we get it. But turning our attention to the Middle East for now, where a 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon is now officially underway. The pause in fighting came into effect at 10 o'clock last night, but the Lebanese army claims that since then there have been shelling on several villages in the south of the country. It's worth noting that Hezbollah, the group backed by Iran, was not part of this agreement. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has confirmed that his forces will not withdraw from southern Lebanon.
We remain in Lebanon in a thickened security zone. It is not the 5 points that were before the Iran war. It is a security strip that begins at the sea and continues to Mount Salt and the outskirts of Mount Hermon up to the Syrian border. There we are staying. We are not leaving. This allows us, first of all, to break the danger of infiltration into our community, and secondly, it allows us to prevent direct anti-tank fire into the community. The communities are now protected from these things.
Well, our US correspondent David Blevins asked Donald Trump how he thought the ceasefire would be perceived on this side of the Atlantic.
What message do you think the ceasefire in Lebanon sends to the UK and other European allies who chose not to get involved in the war?
Well, we spent trillions and trillions of dollars on NATO, and when I asked them to get involved in a much situation, which is Hormuz and Iran, they weren't there for us. Remember what I said? They weren't there. None of them. They weren't there. So we were there in Ukraine. I mean, we shouldn't have been. It would have never happened if I were president. But nevertheless, when they've had problems over the years, we were there. When we asked them to get involved on a very minor skirmish by comparison to what it could be, they weren't there. So I don't think they'd be there for a large skirmish, and therefore I think they've got themselves a problem.
Well, our correspondent Sally Lockwood has all the latest for us now from Dubai.
There's a massive sense of relief in the region, I think, today that this ceasefire has now been called in Lebanon. There was a sense of relief here on the 8th of April when that initial ceasefire was agreed between Iran and the US, which brought reprieve to Gulf states that had been attacked for the best part of 6 weeks on a daily basis. But that sense of relief turned to horror when people saw that it didn't include Lebanon, and that in fact the fighting in Lebanon got worse. On the first day of that ceasefire, more than 100 attacks across Lebanon, including Beirut, just in the space of 10 minutes, killing more than 300 people. And there was a sense that for as long as the situation was still so critical in Lebanon, that the fighting continued, then it threatened the entire ceasefire altogether, and that there was a real risk of it all unraveling. And people have really been holding their breath to see if this ceasefire would hold. And it seems there's a lot more optimism today, now that this 10-day ceasefire has been called in Lebanon, that the wider ceasefire will not only ensure, but could be extended. Nonetheless, that ceasefire in Lebanon is extremely fragile. The Lebanese military has reported shelling in the first few hours of the ceasefire. We've also heard from Benjamin Netanyahu that Israeli troops will remain in the south of the country. The IDF said that they targeted more than 380 Hezbollah targets in the space of 24 hours just yesterday. So it is extremely fragile. Hezbollah has said that we will respect the ceasefire as long as Israel does. But the IDF, under the ceasefire agreement, reserves the right to act in self-defense. So there is still a very real chance that this could all unravel. It's very delicate indeed. And then when we look at the bigger picture here, certainly some very positive signs when it comes to the wider negotiations between the US and Iran. It looks like they really are working towards a second round of talks in Islamabad as soon as next week. A senior Iranian official has said there's been progress made in the last couple of days thanks to Pakistani mediators. And Donald Trump, who's been talking up chances of a deal for some days now, has also described their relationship with Iran as in a very good place, which really is a stretch of the imagination at the moment when you look at what's happened over the last 7 weeks, over the last year, when America and Israel have attacked Iran twice now while mediation and negotiations were underway. So is there any hope that it's not going to be any different this time? Well, they are trying again with these negotiations, with hopefully another second round of talks next week. But there's zero trust between Washington and Tehran. And it's worth noting as well that the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth also said in the last 24 hours, we're locked and loaded. Essentially, we are ready to return to fighting if necessary, and warned Iran, we are watching you. There is a third US aircraft carrier currently making its way to the Middle East. There are also more Marines on their way from California due to be in the region by the end of the month. We've been here before. We've seen negotiations underway, and then it's turned to escalation with America and Israel attacking Iran. There is hope it's going to be different this time, but at the moment it's very fragile. But certainly for many in this region, and certainly for Gulf states, this pause in fighting is extremely welcome indeed, but people are very conscious that the situation in Lebanon remains very delicate. They've been through such a lot in the last 6 weeks. There's still such a humanitarian problem there when it comes to more than 1 million people displaced. They've been through such a lot. So a very fragile situation in Lebanon. The Strait of Hormuz remains largely paralyzed. Commercial shipping has not resumed in the numbers that are needed. It's having very real world consequences on global markets. People are very conscious of that. So for now, yes, a pause in fighting is very welcome, but it does feel like the region and the world is in a rather tense holding pattern.
Well, with there. Let's go now to Paris. Our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, is there. Pretty shaky shot we've got there with you, Sam. The Prime Minister just about to arrive there at the Elysee Palace. You've just been speaking to him. He says he's furious and that it's staggering that he wasn't told that Peter Mandelson had failed security vetting.
Yes, here in Paris, about to meet President Macron. I'm in the yard of the Elysee Palace. I've just been speaking to Keir Starmer. He is making out he is absolutely furious with the situation where he was not informed. He says that the security vetting for Peter Mandelson was failed by the Security Department. And he says the top official in the Foreign Office, Ollie Robbins, nevertheless waved through his ability to see secret documents without telling him, any minister, or anyone in number 10. The point of the interview that the Prime Minister has just done is to convey the anger at this situation, the fact that led him to mislead Parliament, according to critics, to say that Peter Mandelson passed the vetting when he hadn't in a press conference on February the 5th. This is deeply embarrassing for Keir Starmer, and he is finding and making clear that there are people to blame, and he is angry. But, Sam, there are challenges and limits with this approach. It makes him look as if potentially he doesn't have a grip on the government machine almost 2 years into his time in office. Sometimes the allegation is that he is more of a passenger than a driver in his own government. He didn't have the level of grip to be told. And clearly, inside the Foreign Office, they felt that number 10 just didn't want to hear the bad news about the security vetting for Peter Mandelson. Inside the Foreign Office, they knew that number 10 had seen some of the problems with Peter Mandelson's appointment, some of the allegations about his links to Jeffrey Epstein, and some of the queries about Peter Mandelson's financial affairs. The vetting documents and the various bits of due diligence that was done by the